And what we're talking about here is getting into flow states. A flow state, like if you're a copywriter, that's when you've got your creativity is running and you start writing and you literally can write the whole thing and then step back and go back and edit.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Streamline to Scale. Today's guest is the fabulous Bryan Chestnut here. Thank you for being here, Bryan.
Good morning. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So excited for this today. We're going to just do a really fun Operations Power Hour. Bryan here has actually been a really instrumental mentor of mine for quite some time now. I'm really grateful for him. The conversations around operations with Bryan they're just always a blast. So I wanted to share one with you guys today. So Bryan here, like I said, he's been a mentor of mine. He's also, he's a seasoned executive and leadership consultant with illustrious career spanning over 25 years in the U.S. Navy SEALs, actually. Bryan is a badass, basically. And his stories will show you that. Like his mindset, like work and stories, I can't tell you how many times he's talked me off a ledge. Can't talk today. During his military service, Bryan held multiple leadership roles, thriving in high-pressure environments and executing decisive actions to safeguard national interests. His ability to inspire and encourage his team members to reach their full potential speaks to his exceptional leadership skills, and eventually earned him 2 bronze medals and a Purple Heart, just throwing that in there, keeping the ring on. Following his military career, Bryan transitioned into the business world, that's where I met him. And he's been really instrumental in driving change and growth for several organizations. Everybody I have ever spoken to who's worked with Bryan just raves about his work and his ability to pull in the company culture and team, really get things streamlined and organized. I mean, he's just exceptional at everything, where he really specializes in working with companies that are grappling with some systemic issues, often around leadership, communication, systems, process breakdown, all the good stuff that we all kind of it often happens in the background of operations. So he's an expert at identifying and remedying these issues, and my go-to advisor and mentor on all things operations and mindset, not freaking out. He's worked at some fantastic masterminds, including Frank Kern's Copy Accelerator, where I actually met him, Vince Del Monte, and so many more. Bryan is just an exceptional leader, and I'm really grateful to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Michelle, I'm going to have you do that anytime I go speak somewhere. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I told you I get a little dyslexic, so you could tell I kind of like tripped up and then just, I just wing it at those points.
I am fully dyslexic and fully ADD, so I completely understand.
Oh man, it's great. It's great. It's finding, we find ways to function through that. So
absolutely.
Cool. Well, good morning. I would love to hear a little bit from you on, what you really like, how you kind of got into the operations side and what you really love about business operations.
Sure. So I was, as you know, I spent 25 years in the military, and the positions that I held towards the second half of my 25 years, they best translated into operations roles in business. And it's interesting. The last position I held in the military was I ran operations for a unit in the SEAL teams. And it's really just the day-to-day business, like making sure that everything, we constantly streamline, we constantly try to make things better. And in that community, when you're in a group of those types of individuals, everyone is always trying to make things better, which it does a couple of things. You have some of we call it the good idea fairies, where people come out with all kinds of crazy ideas, and we love them because we bring that to the round table and everybody gets a say, even the youngest, most inexperienced person in the room, where we see a lot of our best ideas come from that group of people, because they're different. They're not thinking with our experience. So that role really set me up for how to maneuver into business. And in 2018, that was my first role coming out of the military. I wasn't actually out of the military, but I went and worked for Frank Kern. And that was a very easy transition because I don't know if any of you guys know Frank Kern, but when he trusts you, which we developed trust pretty quick, when he trusts you, he just turns the key to the company over and gave me the credit cards and the bank accounts and said, can you just make it go? And he's amazing. That guy it was great to work with him. And that allowed me to just kind of see top to bottom how to make a business work better. And it was no different than the military.
That's huge. That's huge. And to like gain that kind of trust and relationship with a business owner and, you know, to be working with someone like it's something you essentially like, you absolutely have to have in this kind of role. And to give that kind of trust to someone and then let them kind of take off and build such an, you know, incredible business off of that and all the knowledge and experience you have. And I just want to point out is like something else that like came out of your military career that I remember you telling me about this a long time ago was the 4 hours of focus time. And I know like you guys really optimized for that. I want to hear a little bit more about that kind of stuff, because that's been a huge thing for me. Well,
we would conduct training that required you to be incredibly focused. If you think about it, it's 18 grown people running through a building trying to shoot index cards, while there's explosions going off. We would be breaching a door, blowing a wall up, and you're trying to move, shoot, communicate. And it requires an immense amount of focus. And there are people, you've got to be able to see an entire room while there's other people in it and still shoot and still hit the target. And if you miss the target, you get to take off and run. They we had like big 18-wheeler tires. You get to run with one of those out to a tree about 200 yards away, climb up to the top of the tree on a steel ladder, and then climb back down and bring your tire back and then go do another run. And it's pretty brutal, but what it absolutely taught us is we would see a point of diminishing returns where we would work the platoons too hard. And it was always around just passing up 3.5 hours. And if the conditions were better, if it was cooler, if the climate was more relaxed, like if we did our first few runs in a very relaxed manner where we try to do a very quiet movement through it, and it requires intense focus, but it's less exciting and there's less stimulus, and we just focus on being slow and smooth, we could push out to about 4 hours. Well, that also translated to our focus time on admin work, mission planning. If you're mission planning and you're spending more than 4 hours focusing on this mission, you're already at the point of diminishing returns. Your first couple of hours, you knew how to do it. And now we would be nuking the problem over and over. And you'd just see like the ideas, you can almost talk yourself out of missions, because it'd be like, well, what happens if there's a Russian invasion in the middle of this and there's 4 of us on the ground and we're being chased by thousands of, it's like, that's not going to happen. The likelihood of that happening is so way out it's inconceivable. But we'd go there if we kept at it too long. So we started just breaking down our focus time to about 4 hours. Now, with that knowledge, like if we were patrolling into a target area, well, we don't count the helicopter ride in. We don't count the walk in to the area. We count the time on target to the time we're off target. We don't want it to be, or the time that we're close until the time that we're off. We don't want it to be more than about 4 hours, because we start degrading a little bit. The units that were working with us, we've noticed they would degrade even faster because there's less experience there. There's less experience doing what we were doing. So, and there's a little bit more complacency because they'd be more in it all the time. So when we shift over to business, I would push that on the team all the time. You need to have 4 hours max of focus time. And during that 4 hours, you need to take breaks to go shake it up a little bit, do some exercise, go for a walk, go take a coffee break and sit outside and watch the birds. But you can't just sit there and focus on things, because you will get to the point of diminishing returns very quickly. So, and this isn't the big tough Navy SEALs. This is human beings. And it's not we, the SEAL teams, it is scientists, physiologists, psychologists, high performing sports or athletes. It's almost a universal truth. Like if you're trying to focus very heavily for more than 4 hours, you're really not doing very well. So
yeah, well, I mean, like you're saying, like you start going down that spiral of overthinking, you start adding in like scenarios that don't really matter. You just kind of, your mind starts like it's like when you like keep trying to like pound something as like it's gonna happen, I gotta figure this out. You never come through with it. Like you have to have those moments where you take a break, you take a walk, and that's when the clarity comes through. You calm down, you're able to like rebalance your nervous system. And have those actual ideas come through. And I think that it's really interesting because like in business, that's very much, a thing where if you can set aside 4 hours of focus time, the amount of work that you get done without all those Slack messages and Messenger and all these things. I
tell our people to turn off your phone, turn off Slack, turn off anything that my wife calls it the binging and bonging. Turn it off. Turn it off and make it so that you have some time. It doesn't have to be 4 hours. You'd be surprised what you can do in one. But where it's remarkable because we never even get one, where normally we've got way less time. And a lot of people, I bet if you really took a account of it, you'd see that you have about 5 or 10 minutes at a time before there's a message, a text, a notification, something like that pops up. So that stuff is detrimental to and what we're talking about here is getting into flow states. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat that whole thing. A flow state, like if you're a copywriter, that's when you've got your creativity is running and you start writing and you literally can write the whole thing and then step back and go back and edit it. If you're like a Navy SEAL and we're working in a house, it's called a kill house because we're shooting live ammo. When we get into a flow state, that's where there's no talking. Everybody is reading, reacting off of each other, and there's no mistakes. And the mistakes that you would have are very minuscule. We get to where we really have to critique hard to find things. And you, as a training person watching this, it's like they're in the flow state. They're going. Like, I don't even want to talk. I just want to watch them because it's amazing watching these guys do this stuff. Same thing with musicians and athletes and other high performing people. Those flow states, when you're getting into that on your business, you can roll through so many problems and solve them so fast. And half the time you find that they're not really actually problems in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And one other thing that you kind of brought up with this was, the way that you, when you guys were training for this and working through figuring all this out, was the amount of teamwork and how it's a teamwork experience. And that's what you need in order for your business to grow, or any part of your life. So I am curious, like, I know you work a lot with team and company culture and a lot of things there. What's like some of the biggest things you see businesses lacking on the team side?
Usually it's honesty. There's fear and honesty. So fear is usually brought in by the owner of the company, or it's always the owner founder that thinks they're a CEO and they're just not. They all think they can do it. We all think we can do it. I can be a CEO. I don't want to be a CEO. I don't want to do that. I want to do the operations, the budgeting, all that kind of stuff. I like to work with teams, and I'm just as comfortable letting the CEO take the credit while we're working. And that's their job, is to deploy resources where they need to be, and then to make sure that we have what we need to be successful. And then my job is to do that for the whole company as well. But the founders and owners and CEOs, it's great. I go into companies and I find people that are worried about their job. If you're worried about your job, you're not focusing on getting the job done. So if you're worried about the job, you're not telling me what I need to know. You're telling me what I want to hear. And I'll tell the business owners when I first come on board, I don't need to work with you. I don't want to work with you if you object to me telling you what you need to hear. Because if I'm sitting there, if I come in and I tell you what you want to hear, we're going to go bankrupt almost every time. Every business I've worked with, I've had to identify that as we will have times where we may go into a small room and scream at each other. When we come out, you're still the CEO or the boss. Your call, you get the final call. I'm a good enough follower to take that. But when we come out, we're on a united front and there's no hard feelings. And if there is, then I quit. I'm going to go somewhere else and work with people that are, that can handle that type of criticism and harsh conversations or down to earth conversations. And so far that's worked out really well. But what I see in the companies are people are all trying to tell this, keep the people above them happy. Nobody's trying to mess up. So they're trying to keep everyone above them happy. And the reality of it is if they want to keep me happy, they're going to come in and own every mistake that they make. And what I see happening is I try to make people comfortable. I'm like, hey, we're going to make mistakes. It's how we react to the mistakes. That's what matters. I don't want people, I set thresholds to where their decisions can go though. I don't want them making a decision where they're like, yep, I decided to spend $30,000 this month on Facebook ads and I didn't tell you guys. I don't like that. But I like it when people make decisions, they make mistakes. We come in, we look at the mistake and say, and they come in and say, I made a mistake. This is what happened. And we're like, yeah, okay, let's take a look at this. All right, you were on the right track. You might have made the decision a little bit differently here, but sure, that makes sense. Now let's fix it. So what I find happening is people get to the point where they own the mistake. They make decisions, more importantly. They're not afraid to make decisions. They're not afraid for their job. And then they'll come in and we'll have a team meeting and somebody will say, hey, I made a mistake. I'll tell them, hey, this is what happened. And I'll hear somebody say, oh, that was me. I did that. That was totally on me. And then the next thing I see is a ripple effect where it goes to somebody else like, no, actually, I'm the one that set the stage for that. That's why they made that decision. And it comes back around. And by the time we're at the end of the conversation, I'm like, okay, guys, here's the deal. I made the mistake because I didn't direct you guys correctly in the first place. What's the solution? I don't care about who made the mistake anymore. We're done. We went through and looked at that and we're all good. What's the solution? That is a page right out of the SEAL team playbook because everything falls on the chief of the platoon when we're operating, everything. So if somebody makes a mistake, we criticize them. We take a look at it. And then when I say criticize, we critique it and it's honest information. And 9 times out of 10, we find that the reason Bob took a left-hand turn because he was going into the room is because there was something that somebody else did that keyed him off to that. And that set us up a little bit off and we recovered from it. When the team starts to read and react to that, it gets very, so thank you for that right there, because that allowed me to get my coffee. So
sorry, I just muted them.
Creating that company culture is huge. And it's vastly important. And what you end up seeing is that people don't have unneeded stress. They're operating in much more stress-free. And if you have ever been completely stress-free, you know what I'm talking about, because it's the most relaxing feeling in the world and you can actually perform. And I take steps every day to make sure that I do not have any stress. And I tell the people that I work with, I am more than happy leaving this job in 5 minutes. So what that does is when the owners and the founders, the CEOs, whatever, when they get to the point where they realize like this guy's worth his weight for sure, they don't want to lose you. So I don't threaten them. I just let them know right off the bat. If you guys don't like how I'm doing it, then it's time to cut ties. And that keeps all of us honest. But it goes for the team as well. The team has got to not fear for their jobs. They've got to own everything that they can, and they need to constantly be streamlining. And I tell them very early on, come into me with the most ridiculous ideas ever, because somewhere in that ridiculous idea that you have, there's something that we can utilize. There's something I haven't thought of before or nobody else has. So even if it sounds completely crazy, bring it up and let's talk about it. And it fosters that that honesty in the company culture. And I think that's the thing is it starts at the top. So I have to live it in order to make it happen for everybody else. And I have to own my mistakes in order for that to be safe for everybody else. And I have to make sure that everybody is not in fear for their job or in fear of making mistakes. You know, I'm not going to fire you for making mistakes. I'm going to fire people for not putting out the effort to constantly try to streamline. So
I mean, I think that's super, I mean, that's a really good point there. And also like, you know, mistakes is where we learn and find places to streamline, places to, you know, fill holes. But also I was talking to somebody about this last night is like, they made a little mistake and some email went out or something. And so they just send another email out to list, say, hey, sorry, we're building this new site or we're doing this thing. And an email went out that wasn't supposed to, but here's a discount code. And then the company made a bunch of money from it. It's like, you know, these mistakes can actually lead to one, it's more authenticity and honesty with your audience. So it's creating more connection, allowing them to trust you more. Because you're human, we all make mistakes. And I think that's a huge part of like what you're saying here is that, you know, not fearing for your job, not fearing all, you know, your boss can hate you. Like that's a huge thing where a lot of people like, oh my gosh, my uncle just started this new job and he's constantly calling me like, I think everybody hates me. And you know, everybody feels that way. Then they first start a job.
Nobody's looking at you. Nobody's looking at you. They're looking at themselves. They all know they made mistakes.
Yep. Yeah. It's like normalize those mistakes and embrace them and find ways to work through them and just, you know, find what the solution is, like you're saying. Yeah, it's huge.
The teams I work with shine when a mistake has been made because what you see is people come out of the woodwork to help because they don't want that person getting tagged with a mistake. And I recently gave one of the people a promotion. And when I say promotion, it was a 20% increase in pay over the course of the year. And I called him up and I said, hey, you know, I just want to let you know, we're really happy with what you've been doing. And your pay is going up to this amount. And he's like, but I just made those screw ups. Are you sure? And I was like, those are mistakes. Of course you're going to make mistakes. That's not going to stop us from giving you a promotion. Like, I'm not rewarding you for making a mistake. I'm rewarding you for owning that mistake and allowing our team to shine when they came in and fixed it. And I was like, if you noticed, was there any interruption in anything that happened in the business? He's like, well, no. I was like, yes, that was a good mistake. It's like training. And, you know, he was just kind of shocked. He's like, well, in that case, I wanted to let you know that I did this other thing. And it was like something terrible, right? And I was like, okay, now I'm holding the promotion. I was like, did you really do that? He's like, no, I just wanted to see what you would say, you know? but right, so that was a Frank Kern thing. Frank makes mistakes and he owns them right away. And, you know, he'll be like, oh, that was my bad. I did this. And then he will come out and say it in his emails, on his podcasts, on his webinars. And people get the biggest kick out of that because he is the most, I think he's one of the most relevant and most relatable people that is online right now. And he has been for years. So I've never one time seen him get upset at one of the people on the team making a mistake. Now he might call me up and say, hey man, that was pretty bad. Like, yeah, but we'll recover from it. He's like, oh no, we already recovered from it. We should make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, it points out the points where you need to fix something so that it doesn't happen again in a bigger and worse way. And I think that humility aspect is huge, especially in a leader, is, you know, having humility and being authentic and being relatable. Like that's what we want as humans, is like, we're looking for connection, especially in this digital world and all this kind of online space. You know, a lot of the coaching programs in our communities is everybody's just online. And it's like, you know, you don't get authentic people. It's harder to portray online unless you can really have that humility and embrace those mistakes and find the lesson.
Speaking of that digital world, like, you know, if you take on a role like a COO or something like that, or, I mean, if you're going to be engaging with people at a higher level of a company, go meet them in person. Like, have that I'm flying to Dubai to go meet a company I'm just working with this week. I'm going to fly to Dubai and just go have face-to-face time with them because it's important. Does that mean we need to go back to the office? No, we need to stay virtual because the overhead that we cut from having properties was unbelievable. 25 to 150,000 a month in the companies that I've been working with that are making 5 million to 10 million a year. Like that's unbelievable amount of overhead. It allowed us to hire people that automate things and make things streamline and go faster. It allowed us to do that with that budget. So that all these guys out there saying, we're going back to the office, that's a farce. They're getting political pressure from government to revitalize the cities, which that's great, but somebody else can do that. I'm not doing it.
I agree. There's like, I went digital or I went virtual work from home, whatever, like 10 years ago. And there's no chance I'll go back. I turned down some ridiculous deals. I'm like, no, not a chance.
I can't get a team to operate and function as efficiently in an office environment. And I'll be honest, I'm one of the guilty parties. We did a lot of talking when we had an office. Our meetings might have gone a little bit longer when we were in an office, and even in the SEAL teams, I got to tell you, we would have a meeting and we'd get to the bottom of everything that we had. And then it would be like, hey, so what do you guys want to do this weekend? So I think that is an important part of any interpersonal relationship, but we might have taken it a little too far sometimes and went on for 30 minutes or an hour when we didn't need to.
Well, I think that's the huge thing with any in person is like one, you're getting those like water breaks or coffee breaks or whatever where the chit chat starts or somebody stops by to say hello and it takes 20 minutes to get back into your focus zone. So like it's just incredibly hard to focus and get your work done when you're in those situations. But it's also there's another thing is like a lot of people do struggle with figuring out how to keep a team accountable during these times. So I am curious, like how do you do this kind of like team management and keeping the team accountable for things in a virtual world like this? Like what are some key like tricks you've got?
Well, so for starters, nobody that works for me needs babysitting. They don't. And as a matter of fact, I have people that are reaching out to me like, hey, did you get this done? I'm like, I'm the boss. I got it done. They're like, okay, just checking. So the trick to it, I think, is you give them overarching tasks. You make them understand what the intent is. And I keep reverting back to in the military, we did it this way. Well, in the military, I never went into a deployment to Iraq, Afghanistan. It didn't matter. Kuwait, Yemen, Saudi Arabia. None of those countries, it doesn't matter. I never went into any area where I had a specific thing saying, you're going to go after this person. It never was. We got the mission was the commander's intent. The commander's intent is to, like at one point it was, the commander's intent is to go in and disable and cripple Daesh functions in the area. And that was ISIS at the time. So we figured out, well, what's going to cripple them? What is the thing that they are leaning on most? So we would find the problem and we would solve the problem. And then we would report back because you always want to tell them what you're doing, right? So that's how I run these teams is I'm like, hey, we want to improve our marketing plan. I'm thinking that we should do this, 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 and this, but you guys tell me what you want to do. And then they come back and then we will have the sales team, the fulfillment team, the marketing team, and operations on a quick meeting, go over what the plan is. And I can't tell you how many times the sales team has stepped in and been like, hey, it's not going to work. The clients want this and this. I'm like, whoa, okay. And we change it a little bit. Or the fulfillment team will step in and say, hey, we can't fulfill on that. Like, we can't do that. It would be a serious problem to deliver on that. What I'm getting at is they all have their jobs, but they don't work in silos. They constantly collaborate to see who can, how they can help other departments as well. And they keep in mind, if I say I want to give away this PDF, the fulfillment team has to figure out how to get it out to everybody, and like that kind of stuff really matters. So I don't handhold, I don't babysit. I ask them to have a seat at the table, tell me what they want to do. And we as a group will kind of say, hey, does everybody agree with that? And if we all agree, then we do it. If we don't agree, then I want to hear that dissenting vote, and we'll either overrule it or change. It's all setting up basically like little decision points, but it's not about micromanaging, which is the biggest crippling thing in a business. That's the other owner, CEO, founder. That's their disease. They've had to do everything on the way up, and they don't know how to turn it off, and they don't know how to delegate. So delegating is huge. And that's part of that developing the people is I learned to delegate things, which is difficult. You delegate things out. The person that you're delegating to, their job is to report back and let you know what the status is. And the teams run super smoothly that way. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I think that's huge, is that like the way that you empower your team to have a seat at the table, to speak up, to share ideas, and feel like they're actually a part of what you're creating. So while you're doing this, you're also aligning people to the company culture, the mission, the vision, all these things. So they're actually feeling heard, which is what everybody wants, to feel heard, right, and to feel like you're actually, contributing in a way that's really useful to the company and yourself. And it's giving you purpose in your work. And I think that that's a lot of what helps you, and how you've really turned a lot of the company culture around in businesses too, is you help align the team and give them this kind of feeling that they're actually supporting what y'all are working on. I think that's huge. So a lot of businesses, like you said, like the visionaries especially, become micromanagers, and a lot of that comes from them like being afraid like things aren't getting done. They don't know what's going on. They see all this money going out, but like what's happening? And so like how do you show them what is happening, and like these, like the reporting side of it, or just the budgets, and seeing like where things actually are? Like how do you show them this without and ease those nerves, I guess?
The first thing is to get the reporting set up and get like dashboards for them or whatever. So this is a really, it shouldn't be a secret, but it seems like it is. The best way to get people to stop micromanaging is to answer their questions before they get a chance to ask them. Mm-hmm. So one company, we went in and the owners didn't understand what lifetime value really meant. They didn't realize that understanding how long people are staying in their program, the churn rate actually matters. They thought that if I make $300,000 a month, I'm great. I'm just like, that's awesome. Have you looked at your margins? Margins? Like, it doesn't take a business degree to understand margins. Actually, nothing in a business degree actually is going to help you any more than just common sense in business. Not that I've seen anyway. And not that I'm the most experienced person ever, but I've had companies that their margins were like at 7%. And they thought that since they were making, $500,000 a month, they're doing great. I'm like, well, you're doing phenomenal, except your payroll's $250,000 a month. You're wasting money and all these like software at 20 grand a month, things like that for a coaching company are insanity. So we break down the numbers, and I've had to show LTV in different ways to different people, because here's the founders, CEOs, owners are a different mind and a different mindset than an accountant. An accountant is a different mindset than the operations person. And thank God, because the companies wouldn't function if everybody was exactly the same. Mm-hmm. But I've worked with a company specifically. I went to work with them because of their dysfunction, because I just wanted to see it. And it was crazy. They like to hire people that were all exactly the same. And I think they're still just kind of floundering about out there. It's really entertaining because it's very easy. They've got everything nailed down to get out of that, but they can't because they won't empower the right people. So the key is to understand that the CEOs, the upper echelon in a business, they probably aren't leaders. They think they are. They want to be. I've had one guy that was a CEO of a company and an owner who we were driving in a car one time, and he started telling me all about leadership. And I'm just looking at him like, wow, you don't even pay attention to who your audience is. You've been leading elite teams for 25 years, and you know that, but now you're prophesizing to me about leadership and what you went to a course an hour ago. But it was the point is they're not necessarily that type of person, and that's okay. They don't have to be. They're the entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't mean you need to be a leader. You hire people to be leaders. But I see this folly all the time, and they think that micromanaging is the way to do it, and that kind of stuff. But we've had to go in and show them, like at one point I showed the company, the leadership, it costs, you've got a program that's, say it's $2,000 a month, or say it's $497 a month, but it costs you $350 to administer each one of those clients every month. So you're only taking home as an owner for your 50 clients, you're only taking home $150 a month for each one. That's the model. And that was when they were like, oh, and I mean, we've been trying to explain to them the dollars and cents the whole time, but then you start throwing in cost of acquisition. So it's cost of acquisition and cost of administration, and throw all of that together and then come up with, if these people don't stay 6 months, you've lost money on them. And your average person is staying 8 months. So you haven't lost money, but you're barely making any money. And so doing things like that is critical. Being able to present information, if they're not resonating with it in the beginning, then you have to change the way that you're presenting it. And because I was just going at them saying, hey, here's the LTV, here's the cost of acquisition, here's what's going on, this is what happens. And with other companies, I've come in and they're like trying to gain the trust and get the owners to back off. And they're like, I don't know if we're doing the right thing. I'm like, look at your bank account. And they're like, I know, but we made $400,000 last year at this time, and this year we're only at 220. It's like, yeah, you're at 220, but your costs have so radically changed that your margins are at 34% where they were at 20%. So you're taking home just as much money, but you've got less overhead, and the company's got more room to grow. And it's scalable now. And you see the lights go on, and coaching companies in particular, the coaching companies that want to hire a bunch of coaches, and we have to present them with, this is your overhead. The team that you have right now can handle, the projection is we can handle 350 clients before we have to even look at hiring another person. And you're only at 120 now. But you may need 2 more coaches, however that works out. And then we just project our cost of payroll going up slightly, but the cost of revenue generated going up dramatically. And we'll show them that, and it gives them that like scale projection. I like doing that in a conservative fashion, but I noticed that a lot of these guys are like, hold on a second, but when are we going to be a $100 million company? It's like, well, you're not. This isn't, if you're a $100 million company, you've already been bought out by now. So you've got to have realistic expectations. So I'm sorry if I'm getting way down in the weeds on that, but I see these projections, and it's like, we're going to have $1 million people a month or $1 million a month by December. I'm like, do you realize how absolutely, it's not improbable, it's not impossible, but almost the entire company would need to change dramatically for that to happen. So,
yeah. Well, and pointing that out too, I think that's huge, is like being able to see the projections like over time. Like, I think that's key, where most business owners do not have that, at least not in this space, the internet marketing space. Like they're not, financial types. They're not really looking at you look at the numbers, they're looking at the big numbers, the conversion numbers, like things like that. But the numbers, in order for you to scale, I think that's where like the operator really comes in and helps show you like, this is the budget, the plan, like these are the projections, and those pieces that really kind of tie it together. And I think that's why, there's a lot of like, this group is a lot about, bridging the communication gap between operators and visionaries. And that's a big part of it, is showing those dashboards. I know you and your team set those up and share them with them. And I think that's huge. And also, like you've said a couple times now, is being able to be like real and honest with them, and them open to hearing the word no or not right now. Being able to set plans based on those projections and those timelines and what everybody is working on. I think that's something that really lacks, because, you know, as visionaries, I do this too. We all do it. We get shiny ball syndrome and like this new idea. We got to go chase this. We got to do this. It's going to be so great. And we're going to make so much money off of it. And then you look at the actual numbers and they're like, you're making like this much off of it. You know, like you gotta dive into those. And if it's not your jam to dive into them, hire somebody and work with them to build out these dashboards, to show these projections, to create this kind of environment where you don't have to be the one, you know, overseeing all this and micromanaging and all that. Like, people have somebody to go to have discussions about their concerns and just really kind of work through this. I think that's a huge thing you bring to your clients.
Well, I think that, have you ever heard of Chris Guerrero?
Yeah. I heard him speak at Mimosa at Cabo.
Yeah, I did a coaching call with him at one point, and I love his mindset. So matches exactly what I think is a good operations CEO mindset. But, you know, he developed to that point. But his whole thing was, I think he said he got sick, and he had some problems where he was out for like a month, and then he came back and the company was actually doing better. And he's like, oh, I am the logjam. And noticing that's one thing, doing something about it is impressive, because it's hard to do that. But Chris's thing, that I heard him say that it was unique, because I hadn't heard that before, was once you get your team up and running, you have your operations, you have your fulfillment and all that stuff. First person you hire after that's a data analyst. And he's like, then you can scale. And he needs somebody to give him the data and then help him understand what it means. He understands now. He understood a lot of it back then, but having somebody that can also help him understand some of that stuff was a huge benefit. So I don't think you should make decisions in business that aren't based on numerical values, because I've seen, we call it, we jump into companies, and now we've kind of coined the term within our team, spaghetti marketing, and, you know, shotgun business. Like all of DR. Yeah. I think everything's working great because it feels good. I'm like, it feels, I don't have any feelings. I want to see the numbers, you know, and you have to be able to like look at information and see what it means. And it's interesting, you know, Jared running Facebook ads, he'll have people that are like, I want to focus on getting this value up no matter what. And he's like, that's great, but these over here go down when you do that. Like, they all play a part together, and you have to look at it from an entire spectrum and how they affect each other. And it's the same with business. If your departments you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you've got a department, your customer support is bad, good luck with sales. You guys sell all you want. Churn rate's going to go through the roof. If fulfillment's not doing their job, same thing. Sell all you want, churn rate's going to go through the roof. So it's hugely important to focus on that, getting numbers and explaining to other people in the company, this is what these numbers mean, this is what we're shooting for, because you want your whole team to have an idea. They should not be siloed and have no idea, why are we doing this marketing thing? You know, no, we're just doing it, be quiet. I've seen that at companies. Their customer support team has no idea what's going on or even when a launch is happening. And then they get bombarded with questions, and then it takes them 2 hours to figure out what was going on so they can answer the customers, and the customers get irritated. You don't want that. So you got to operate off numbers, and you've got to have everybody at the table. And that doesn't mean long meetings, by the way. No. We've got one of the companies I'm working with right now. We have a 1 hour meeting scheduled per week. That company is more efficient than it's ever been. So
I think how do you set that up for the team? Like, so that they have that kind of, you know, they're still getting to add ideas and everything. Like, how do you do that to like this 1 hour meetings? There's so many different versions of meetings. It's like,
oh gosh, EOS is designed specifically for meetings, I believe, right?
Yeah, like every
system.
day or something. It's like, Jesus.
Right. So we run our meetings. It's again kind of out of the military. It's an IDR format, and it's just item discussion recommendation. In EOS, they run it as item discussion solution. I don't care about solutions. I want to know what the recommendations are, and I'd like people to come to the table with 3 recommendations, and we pick one that works for everybody. And it doesn't matter which one we pick, because any of them will work, because we've got a stellar team. So don't get emotionally invested in the recommendations. But that's how we run our meetings. Is we've got the items we're going to discuss. We set a time that we're going to discuss them. And I've got one business owner that likes to drag meetings out and talk about things that are just all over the map. And I just have to step in and say, okay, so we're going to move on to the next thing. And he's like, oh, okay, and we move to the next thing and run through. And when he is on the calls last 1 hour, or because we shut it off. If he's not on the calls last 30 to 45 minutes. And the whole team has noticed it now, and they start talking to him about it. And so he's realizing how to kind of come around to that. But yeah, we've had clients that they want to have 2 or 3 hour meetings. And if they're not respecting their own time, then I'm not a very good leader if I can't get them to understand that their time is worth a lot and that they're paying a ton for that meeting. Mm-hmm. There's nothing better than coming in and saying, you just spent $6,000 on that meeting. They're like, what? Yeah, that's the amount of time per person that you held them up prophesizing about whatever. That's what it cost you. So
the key is like coming back to the numbers, what it's actually costing you. And like, all these, the same thing with the shiny ball and like all these different ideas, all the things that we want to try. And instead of just focusing on one, like starting too many projects at once and all these little pieces really like,
Michele, right there, if you could stop businesses from doing what you just said right there, you would stop 80% of their problems.
Yeah.
It's the shiny object syndrome. The lack of focus in the upper echelon creates a lack of clarity in the lower echelon. And what you end up seeing is the people at the bottom aren't getting the word because the word keeps changing so fast that you end up getting a slinky effect. And you'll have the owners saying, yeah, we're doing this week. And these guys are trying to execute on something else. And then they're like, oh, hold on, we're doing this other thing. And they drop that and they do the other thing. And then I'll have the owners come back and say, well, why didn't this get done 2 weeks ago? Slack is a beautiful piece of equipment for that. Because I'll go back in Slack and I'll pull a screenshot. I'm like, this is where we went wrong. And you did it and you get to own it. And if you notice right below it, here's me saying, this is a really bad idea. Everybody's trying to focus on this other thing. And what I get back from that is usually crickets, because I haven't worked with a business owner that is going to own things like that yet. But when I do, I'll stick with them for a long time.
Well, I think that's the point, is like your role is to point those moments out. And like, you're there to keep the ball in the lane, to keep the team on track and to keep the business owner on track, like the visionary. And so many of them want that and ask that. So like when I go in, like doing the recruiting stuff, I always have to tell them, like, you're looking for an operator, you need to be ready to hear no, you need to be able to hear ready and able to hear not right now, and you need to listen and respect what they're trying to tell you or what they are telling you in terms of keeping your eye on the prize, focusing on this, that, and the other. And like, you're showing people the numbers. Like that's, I think, a huge part of what you are looking at, is showing them like what it's costing them to do all these things, how they operate currently,
right.
And bring them to a place where it's profitable.
I also tell them, hey, you are the boss. I have no problem. I'm going to tell you how it's supposed to be and what's right, but you're the boss. So if you say, I want to go left, and I'm saying you don't want to go left, you want to go straight, don't go left. If you finally put your foot down and say, we are going to go left, okay, I'm going to get the team together, we're going left. That's just how it has to be that way. Because I'm not going to shut down a visionary for something that could be a genius move, because it's outside of the scope of my knowledge or experience. That's not my role. My role is to resist until it's time to not resist. And then when it's time to not resist, the whole team makes it work. But I just got to show them how much money it's going to cost and how much they're going to lose.
I think that's, yeah. And that's the thing, is like, you're not saying no all the time. You're not changing it all the time. You're allowing them to have that ability, and it's still their team. They're still managing it. They're still the one who's making the calls. It's just, you're there to help them make the right calls by showing them how much it costs and what it's actually bringing in.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be emotionally invested in a call. I'm going to be emotionally invested in the team and the team's ability to adjust and be flexible. So I still want to run a highly flexible team, but I want to run a highly flexible team that is all got a unity and clarity of focus. And when you have that, I think I've told you this, I don't hire people based off of their skill set, or, I mean, yes, skill set to a degree, but I don't hire people based off of their pedigree or anything like that. I hire people based off of the attitude that they have, because that wins the day every time. And an example from the SEAL teams is, numerous times there have been efforts to put the best guys all together on one team and just put the best people on one team. And every time that they've done it, it's been epic failures. And the problem is those best guys are the best guys based off of some value, but the thing is the best team is that group of the differences. It's the more it's the team that's just got a ton of different type of people with the drive to succeed. And sometimes they have a couple of weak links, but you find out that those weak links are as strong as anybody else around. So the team is phenomenal, but we always try to put the superstars together for something, and it's just been catastrophic failures every time. And the guys that have been on those teams, like, I feel they lose confidence because they're like, I thought I was really good at my job. I can't even do the basics. It's like, well, yeah, you don't have your team. So the team is everything. And that's, I think that's the key to building your team is the people, not necessarily the skill set. You want to put people into their strengths and focus on their strengths and focus on their passions. If they're passionate and it's a strength, and it's on, you're going to have to slow them down.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I watch most when I'm interviewing people, is like, my favorite question is, what do you love about your job most? And watch and listen to what they're passionate about. Like, that's where you hear and see, and like what lights them up. That's what you see come out, and what's going to be helping you grow your business, and just aligning and taking care of your people. Like, they're the ones who are, growing your business. They're the ones taking care of it. Like, you have to trust them. You have to allow them to grow it and be the support that you need in order to reach, the profits that you need, to put the processes in place they're the base. They're the heart of the company. Right. They're the pieces or the limbs.
Yeah. Right. And they're the ones that, if you rely on them and empower them to do what they need to do, it's remarkable what your average person can do. It's because we put people in the average, I guess we put them in the average column. I don't do that, because there's so many times that average has blown me away, and I've just been shocked at their capability. I've got a person that works for me now, was called the ClickUp girl. When I first started working with her, I was like, that's the most derogatory term ever. But the company I was working with really liked to label people. And once you were labeled, you were kept with that label, and that was your capability. She's the CMO for a company now. And it's been a year and a half. They wouldn't let her into marketing meetings because she wasn't a marketer. It's amazing. She's a ClickUp girl. She doesn't know anything about marketing. And it's like, did you guys ever find anything out about her? And I started talking to her, because she was the contractor that did ClickUp. Started talking to her and found out she had her own business. She was figuring out how to make it work. Her ideas were really good. The next thing I know, less than a year later, she's the CMO of another company, and she's turned the company around. So, and you'd never know it. But if you don't give the person the autonomy and the authority to do their job, you're never going to find out what they can do. You're just going to be a micromanager that's falling behind everybody else. So yeah, the average Joe is shocking sometimes.
Absolutely. Unless you
be average Juliet for her.
Jill or Joe or anybody, the average anybody. Well, I mean, that's absolutely, it's like you have to give people a chance to shine. You have to realize that, you know, we aren't all fitting, we don't fit into a little box. We're not a square peg, you know, like we all have so many different areas of expertise and areas that we're passionate about and areas, you know, things that we understand and learn. And that's where I think where you bring the team culture together and you allow them to bring their ideas out and actually be heard and discuss and find the next best move and strategy. You learn so much more about everybody's skills and you're playing off of them in just a really special way. So I do want to say, like, outside of like the company culture and like, you know, the budget and projections and everything you do with companies, you're also like, you go in and you really like streamline and organize things. You create the processes, like what are some of the things that you like, the questions that you ask? What are the first things that you really dive into when you go into a business to come in and see what they need help with first?
The first thing I'd try to do is just look at their systems and processes that they have in place. And shockingly, I will come in and we're in 2023 now. I see people that are running their entire business off spreadsheets. I had one company that had 460 spreadsheets uploaded in 1 month. And like, why would you do that? Why? Like, and so then you have different version histories and all kinds of crazy stuff. And they came out with this stuff. It's project management tools. What a genius thing. So we had that stuff in the Navy back in the 90s. And like we stopped running spreadsheets in the early 2000s because they're super inefficient for a lot of management type things, a lot of projects and things of that nature. So I'll take a look at that and make sure they're running a project management software that functions. I'll make sure that usually we automate things because they don't have many automations going. And what's interesting is people in the business will usually be like, "Oh, they're automating my job." Like, oh my God. I'm like, well, we're automating your job so you get your time back so you can think, so that you can actually focus on making things better in your department, as opposed to pushing the buttons. So if I can push the buttons for you, what can you fix that you haven't seen because you're pushing the buttons all the time? So that's a huge thing to kind of streamline. Is there something else? Have I said something else to you that you were wanting to hear about?
Well, I mean, I think that just really stands out is the project management stuff. Like so many clients are just really resistant to it because it is more technology and it's more difficult to, you know, everybody get on the same page and all these things. It's like, you know, if you don't want to look at it yourself, then hire somebody that'll like to answer your questions that are in the project management software. Like you can absolutely do that. Get a $500 VA who monitors and checks it out and tells you what's going on. Right. And relays the information, but your company needs to be organized into some kind of a system or a process. And that's something I struggle with sometimes with companies, is getting that PM software up. It's amazing how many don't use it.
They don't use it and they end up pushing the capability of each person down. And I want to come in and automate as much as I can so that we bring them up. So they're on a higher level. They're looking. I don't want somebody that's just looking at their desk, pushing the buttons and has no idea of the company. I want them not pushing buttons, stepping up, coming to meetings saying, you know what, I work in customer support. I'm one of the customer support agents. And what you guys are doing in sales is really screwing us up because we're not able to do that stuff. And suddenly they're not pushing buttons. They can think about that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we rely heavily on VAs for that kind of for getting the automations going and to actually look at things that are not as important. I've had clients that they wanted to hire me as a director of operations. And then they were like, can you make sure our Google Drive is sorted out? I'm like, what? That's what you think a director of operations does? Yeah, can you come up with all the naming conventions and everything? It's shocking. And then so they push everyone in the company down to a level below, and they're paying exorbitant prices for low-level people that aren't thinking about anything other than all of this administrative work they have to do. So I won't even tell you what I think about like daily reporting and things like that, daily meetings. If you have to have a meeting daily, you have to handhold. Those people should all go away, or you should, because I've heard the whole, like a couple of companies, their sales teams meet daily on a Zoom call. I'm like, if you're meeting on a Zoom call for an hour and you have 7 people, that's 7 calls that they should have taken to make a sale. Like, what are we doing here? We can meet weekly. Why is it that people that are running things that are of strategic importance to the United States, why don't they have to meet daily?
Yeah.
But your business needs that? Somebody is steering you astray.
Something like, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. And especially like when we're working with contractors and people in our space, like they don't want to meet daily because we're busy and we all are working on multiple things. You're going to get better output if you let people have that autonomy to do their thing and do it when they want it without having to be on a daily meeting at a certain time. And I think one of the things that like might help business owners see what's going, because I know a lot of them like these daily meetings because they hear and see what's going on all day, and then they don't have to like be watching Slack and all these things. But there's a Slack bot, I think it's called Geekbot, where it'll ask you, it'll just send a message and it'll ask the team. You can do it daily or you can do it once a week and get a recap of like what you're focusing on, what your key things are, and what you've completed, or, just ask simple questions. And then you get a breakdown of what everybody's doing. You can read that and not have to jump on a bunch of calls. Like, meetings are the biggest time suck.
You have to tell me more about that. I like that. That sounds pretty cool. But that you should constantly be looking for that kind of stuff that can, I'm not saying make these big changes constantly to interrupt the team. I'm saying something like that. If you need to feel updated, that would be a benign way to do it, where you're not calling people out of what they're doing. One of the questions you did ask me as well was basically the full-time jobs versus part-time or contractor. And I did want to touch on that before we get off this call.
Yeah.
I have every company that I go into work for, they're like, we need you full-time. We need you 40 hours a week. And like, it's shocking to me because of like, we just had a 2-hour conversation. You were telling me you're not exactly sure what's going on with the company, but yet you're telling me what you need from me, who you don't know. Like, I can figure out what's wrong with your company in 3 hours. I just need to talk to a couple of key players, because all the businesses, all of the answers, they lie in the company. They're in your team. So working with numerous companies, I've had software people, Facebook, everybody wants to bring their Facebook ads person in-house. Like, why do you want to do that? They lose the experience of working with all the other companies and bringing that information to help you. That doesn't mean they're working for competitors and sharing information. It means they're taking things that are very similar and seeing things happening that are very similar in other verticals, and they're making changes ahead of time to help you. Now, it works both ways. When they see a huge mistake with you, they don't let it happen with other companies. But that's the thing that has developed me as a COO faster than anything, is working with numerous companies, and especially in the coaching space, because I used to look at all of them as very, very different. Now I look at them as I can figure out what's going on because they're all so similar, just because the breadth of knowledge has grown so quickly. And it allows me to see mistakes and to make changes quicker. And a couple of things I've found out is that I need to work directly with like a CEO or an owner. I have a very difficult time working through someone else because the information is very technical, and that kind of stuff is difficult to do. But understanding the importance of getting that experience and bringing that to bear to a company it's huge. So I won't work with one company because it stagnates people. And I see people in a lot of the companies that I am working with that have no experience outside of that company. And the thing that I hear them say, it's baffling. I'll say, why are we doing it this way? And they'll say, well, we've always done it this way. I'm like, that's almost the worst answer you could give me. So, so go back and figure out why we're doing it this way. And 9 times out of 10, they'll come back and they'll say, we're doing it this way because Bob 4 years ago set it up. I'm like, well, that's a really bad setup. They're like, yeah, I know. I've thought that since I worked here. I'm like, change it. Fix it, make it better. So
yeah, give them the space
having
to do that.
Yeah, having people that it's a change in the culture of business, because traditionally businesses have wanted to have people that they own, that they control their time. And I would put forth that I don't want to control people's time. I don't want to control anything about them. I want to support them and give them what they need to succeed. And they impress me almost every single time. And if they don't, then you let them go quickly, because that's not a good fit. But that's happened very, very few times. So I've been shocked by a lot of the people when I got out of the military. So you're going to be shocked by the caliber of people that you work with. And I said, what's that supposed to mean? And he said, well, it's hard to get people just to show up on time, much less be prepared. And I was like, at a factory, yeah. But you know what? If you can't show up and be prepared at one of the businesses I work with, then we're just going to leave them by the wayside and they're going to go away because we don't have time for that. So, and I don't think there's a union. So I don't have to contend with that kind of stuff. We are performance-based. And the thing is we are performance-based. Every company I work with turns into a performance-based company without the stress. It's not like you're gearing up to go play in the Super Bowl every day. We're going to work with people we enjoy working with because they like to succeed and it's really fun. So the only stress you have is a little bit of, man, do I deserve to be here today? I better go do something that makes a difference because everybody else is. That's the kind of stress that I think is pretty good.
Yeah, so, pushing for growth and improvement and all of that, and like the way you're holding them accountable, but giving them autonomy, giving them the power to create and improve and be a part of something that's actually growing for the company, the mission and everything else. So I think that's huge, having people the ability to have multiple clients and learn from multiple people. So I think it's really useful. And I know that you have an entire team that actually works with you when you go in and streamline and you guys create systems and processes and SOPs and automations and, help you review the team, like who you do and don't need and the tasks and delegations and all of that. So like I know you guys crush it for your clients. And I remember one of the clients, you told me like one simple like email chain brought them in like 650K, like adding one new lead or something like that. And then you were able to bring down the cost of the team and a lot of the output while really enhancing and improving the team and bringing in more A players and things like that. So I think you guys do a really good job in streamlining and organizing things for people and really getting it out there. So if anybody is interested in Operations Streamlining, definitely give Bryan a shout. You can connect on Facebook or message me or any of those things, and I'll make sure you're connected with Bryan because him and his team are just exceptional. So I really appreciate you being here and having this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been really fun.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michelle. It was really a pleasure.
It was really cool. Is there anything you want to like close us off with and tell us any more?
No, unless we're going to start getting into War Story Friday. I'm not doing it.
Let's do it now. I'm not gonna force you.
That's an all-day thing. I'll call the guys up. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you, kind of leading me through this because I will go astray and start prophesizing about things. So, thank you very much. And anytime you want to do this again, let me know.
Awesome. For sure. It was a pleasure. Always fun to talk with you. And thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, Bryan.
Yeah, thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good Labor Day weekend.
You too.